Don't look at me like that. You knew that this was coming. It was such a highly requested astrological analysis. You basically were raving at me. Do Pedro Pascal, do Pedro Pascal. And with good reason, because this man had an amazing beginning of the year as he had the transit of Jupiter crossing his sun, making it a Jupiter return conjunct his sun, but also he had a Chiron return because he has a Chiron in Aries. So this means a lot of expansion all of a sudden, a lot of fame, attention, internet love. All the netizens went goo goo gaga after their favorite Zaddy. Why do you guys call him this? Jesus Christ. However, as with everything in life, there is an astrological explanation. Today's ASTROHUNKS, we are going to be exploring the birth chart of one Hot Tamale, the father of all memes in 2023, and the sweetheart, the heartthrob that had two concurrent series going on at the same time on television, The Mandalorian and The Last of Us. Here is the wonderful Pedro Pascal. Hey crew, today we're doing astrology. This is an episode from my ASTROHUNKS series in which I interpret the birth chart of famous celebrities for your viewing pleasure. As you might have guessed it from the introduction, we are going to be looking into the birth chart of Pedro Pascal. I'm going to be sharing with you the 5 important aspects that I think stand out from his birth chart the most. As an astrologer, I could sit here and talk a whole week about a person's chart. I think that learning about your birth chart and discovering the many depth aspects about it can take a whole lifetime's work of study and introspection. But since this video is limited by time, I don't want to make it boring. I want to make it entertaining for you, and I definitely want you to get into Pedro Pascal's work and understanding him better, because I personally really favor him. This is actually a very subjective, biased clip. I absolutely love him, and I also discovered something pretty shocking while I was interpreting his birth chart. I will tell you this when I will look into his Venus and Mars placement, but up until then, I don't want to confuse you. I just want to tell you very quickly that aside from Mandalorian and The Last of Us, you might have known Pedro Pascal from Narcos. Yes, I actually sat through the whole 2 seasons of Narcos for you guys. All I could do afterwards was speak Spanish with Pedro in my head for the corresponding 2 weeks after that, I think. Yeah, it's a pretty brutal, violent series, but he stands out by playing this kind of like soft-spoken detective who's very pensive. He also played a similar beautiful and kind of soft character in Game of Thrones. He appeared in one episode or a couple of episodes from what I could tell. I don't know, I don't watch Game of Thrones. I didn't want to waste my time with that series. It's not at all my favorite, but Pedro really stood out from that role. The kind of actor that actually took a long period of time until he became well known. He's been acting for decades, but only around his Jupiter return did he explode on the international scene. So it's fascinating to look into why this might have happened. It's not only his Jupiter placement that influenced. Saturn has a heavy part to play in his karmic destiny. So without further ado, before I jump into the 5 key characteristics that stand out from his birth chart, here is his chart. Obviously, the first aspect that I will be looking into is Pedro's Sun in Aries conjunct Jupiter in Aries and also conjunct Chiron. You can't really see it from this cutout that I have here from astro.com, but if you have a look at his birth chart on Astro Charts, you will clearly see the position of Chiron. With Pedro, sadly, there are a couple of competing charts out there on the internet, so you might find some confusing information. Some charts show him as having a midheaven in Pisces and an ascendant in Gemini. Other charts, such as the one I'm using here from astro.com, is showing him having an ascendant at 0° Cancer and a midheaven in Aries. To be honest, the fact that he has a midheaven in Aries and a Cancer ascendant fits better with the energy that I could pick up from as I was reading interviews and watching him online, and also looking at his movies and the choice of roles. Basically, the career problems that he's experiencing, they do speak more about a fighter, a person that is not supposed to give up, and to a certain extent a pioneer, somebody that is bringing forward a different form of masculinity. And Aries energy is a lot about being male, and the principle of Aries, the god of war in Greco-Roman mythology. So the higher vibration of a sun in Aries brings forth qualities such as courage, charisma, independence, creativity. And you can see these characteristics radiating forth from Pedro's talent. He is a really talented man. He honed his craft. He learned his skills. This is not a guy who just overnight became a huge success, which tends to make his fame more enduring. Also, the fact that he is so charismatic. He's not a traditionally good-looking guy. He's actually the least hunky guys from my ASTROHUNKS series. But there's something about him that just makes you want to cuddle him and befriend him. And he seems like a kind of person who would take you under his wing and show you the ropes if you're trying to become an actor or an actress. He's this kind of person that you would trust babies with, right? He's this kind of person that you would be happy to introduce to your group of friends or to your parents. He just has this likability, this social charisma. And it is also stemming from the fact that as an Aries sun, he has a shadow in Libra, one of the most beautiful and socially pleasing signs in the zodiac. So that shadow aspect really complements him and most Aries suns out there. If you have an Aries sun and you live in your Libra shadow, this makes you the opposite of what you would read about your star sign. You might not find the characteristics of a traditional Aries in your description because you tend to spend a lot of time in the shadow zone, which gives you Libra-like quality. You could be more passive, intelligent, beautiful, and you could be afraid of conflict. But with Pedro, we see that he fully embodies these Aries characteristics, but he tends to display them in a softer way, in a kinder way, in a more compassionate way. This is also because his mind, Mercury, we have it there very closely to the Sun and Jupiter, is in Pisces. And he's quite a poetic personality. He's also a person that fights for social rights, freedom, and justice. All you need to know regarding his Sun conjunct Jupiter is that a Sun conjunct Jupiter individual is naturally very optimistic, naturally very protected, blessed. This is a person who's avid for knowledge. They love to learn. They love to grow. They like to see that relationships and experiences have possibilities. This is not an individual that likes the word no. They don't like to be fenced in or limited. And because he has his Sun and his Jupiter, his point of happiness, on the most public point in the chart, this makes him a person that draws a lot of energy from people liking his public image. And his ambitions, his energy, his vitality are sparked by the approval of the public, by the way in which the public sees him. And this is posing a number of issues because it could lead to a sense of low self-esteem when he is not being adored by the public. But when he is, it's like, whew, really lapping it all up and really amplifying his sense of self, radiating even more light. So this is the kind of person that, for example, when they get complimented for their work, it goes straight to their heart. That Moon in Capricorn heart that loves doing a good job above anything else, which segues into the next portion of his chart. So let's talk about that solitary Moon in Capricorn in the 7th house. Actually, a lot of famous actors have moons in Capricorns or Moon conjunct Saturn. I interpreted the birth chart of Johnny Depp, who has a Moon in Capricorn. Brad Pitt also has a Moon in Capricorn, and other individuals such as Timothée Chalamet doesn't have specifically a Moon in Capricorn, but he has a Moon in Pisces conjunct Saturn in Pisces, which functions pretty similarly to a Moon in Capricorn. A Moon in Capricorn is ruled by Saturn, which makes an individual stoic and hardworking, emotionally attached to what they can actually create that is tangible in this lifetime. The problem here that we see in Pedro's chart is that he has this Moon, his emotions, the way he perceives his unconscious needs and desires, the way he is private, the way he loves, the way he relaxes. He has all that energy in the 7th house, the house of other people. So a Moon in the 7th house would make a person a sweetheart. This is an individual that is in love with love, is in love with people, loves to interact. They like to communicate. They like to get to know a variety of different people. This person relaxes by having a partner. However, the fact that we have Saturnian energy there in Capricorn, this talks about separation, lost, long periods of time when he is not feeling much and then all of a sudden he feels everything. So we're talking here about a person that is very sensitive, but he might go through periods of time when it's almost like he's blocked off from his emotions. There could be that he's trying to love somebody, but it's not working out, so he has to stoically walk away from that option because it's not for him. It could be that he might fall in love with somebody that lives on the other side of the world, so he has to kind of yearn and pine for that person until they can finally physically reconnect. Physicality is super important for a moon in Capricorn and even for an earthy lunar landscape. So for example, if you have a moon in Virgo or a moon in Taurus, physicality is ultra important for you in order to feel emotionally connected to somebody. Things such as having a nice home, having all your stuff around you, having good food to eat, being attentive to traditional values such as family and paying respect to institutions and taking care of your elders. All these things are important on an emotional level to an earthy moon person, and especially so to Pedro, who has a moon in Capricorn, the most traditional placement of a lunar energy. However, this is also a detrimental energy because it's kind of like with the moon in Capricorn, when you're ruled by Saturn, you tend to take a lot of time to get close to somebody, to feel something for them. There is a lot of fear related to getting intimate and close to someone. And then if, let's say, the partner decides that they no longer want to be with you, this is so hard for a person that has a moon in Capricorn to let go of that connection. Sometimes moon in Capricorn stay in toxic connections even when it harms them to the extreme, as we saw in the case of moon in Capricorn Johnny Depp. This is why, for example, in his role playing the detective Arturo Peña in Narcos, he takes a slow, sweet time until you actually see more energy for him, more emotionality and more passion on the screen. A moon in Capricorn in the 7th house also talks about having a lot of friends from work, a lot of emotional attachments to people from work. And what I could find from his dating history is that he tended to date a lot of women that he met on set as he was working. This is the kind of individual that would fall in love with their secretary because it's convenient. She's there. They're familiar. Why not? You know, there's no fear. You already know everything you have to do in that connection. So Moon and Capricorn individuals tend to get accustomed to what is familiar to them. But by sticking to what is familiar, sometimes they hold themselves back. So I'm here to let you know that for Pedro, it's not easy to feel. Feelings tend to be quite heavy. This is also the placement of somebody who can go through extensive periods of depression, some alcohol, some narcotics, some weed, in order to relax, in order to not feel so anxious and so afraid. He is a little bit of that fearful kind of nature, which stands a little bit in opposition with his bold and mighty Aries Sun, which talks a lot about courage. So we can see that his sense of identity is very strongly connected to how the public perceives him, where he has his Sun conjunct Jupiter placement, where he tends to come across as very bold and optimistic and happy-go-lucky and blessed. But then in his personal connections, there are a lot of fears, a lot of obstacles. He might go through periods of separation. He could have overcome certain periods of depression and low energy, also due to the fact that his moon is not only in Capricorn, but it is also sitting in opposition from his Saturn in Cancer. Let's talk about this placement. So Pedro has a Saturn in Cancer, and a really interesting thing is that it is placed in the 1st house, the house of the body, the identity, the personality, the conscious idea that we have about who we are. The 1st house is normally ruled by Aries, so it's fascinating that he has karmic debt related to his Aries Sun. In addition to this, we see a mutual reception between his moon in Capricorn and his Saturn in Cancer. Normally, ideally, you would have a Saturn in Capricorn, which gives you a lot of discipline, very strong, healthy boundaries, the capacity to understand rules and regulations in society, and usually an increasingly better relationship with a father, or you stepping into the role of a father figure in case your father was absent or neglectful. And by correspondence, it would give you a moon in Cancer. The moon in Cancer is the best placement where you can have the moon because it helps you be quite flexible with your emotions, it helps you be nurturing, it helps you be a great parent, However, we can see that in Pedro's chart, they are unfortunately flipped. So Saturn in Cancer can make you withhold your emotions due to fears, and a Moon in Capricorn can make you be a bit too stern and judgmental, not only with other people that you love, but also with yourself especially. I feel that he suffers from a lot of internal pressure related to how he perceives his body. I'm sure that as he was growing up, Pedro thought that he isn't as good looking as everybody else, that he kept comparing himself to other people. I'm sure that he thought that his desire to become a really good actor was often blocked by the fact that he isn't as phenomenally handsome as other actors in Hollywood. However, this gave him the necessary modesty and the necessary desire to improve in order to achieve his ambition, which we can now see is so beautifully portrayed in his characters. This is a guy that understands the technique of acting. He also has been teaching a lot about how to act. He's also been doing a lot of work in the theater world. This is a person that understands his craft, not a dilettante, not an overnight success. This is a man who can actually impart some of his knowledge to the next generation. And what a coincidence that the next generation seems to already be pledging their allegiance to the flag of Saggi. So a Saturn in Capricorn shows an individual that builds an identity slowly in time, mostly by being criticized by other people. And I can see that he built his identity mostly in relation to, first of all, his mother. And there's an interesting backstory there with his mother and his father, who moved all the way to America due to being politically persecuted, and his mother separating from his father. He seemed to have been very close to his mother. Unfortunately, if I read that correctly, she took her own life, which was a big shock, you can imagine. Again, Moon in Capricorn, separation from a parent, the parent that potentially you were attached to the most. So there is a lot of karma there regarding his relationships with women. It's not a coincidence that he's not yet married with children. This is a guy that really needs to process some pretty heavy energies. And first of all, he needs to understand who he is in the absence of other people's opinions, in the absence of other people's adoration and opprobrium. Saturn is giving him the necessary ambitious energy, but also modesty, so that he can put in the work into becoming a real individual, 100% a bona fide actor, a professional individual that is able to share with others his knowledge, but also have this calming, warm, teacher-like energy that we all know and love nowadays. So it seems that around his Jupiter return, Pedro came fully into this Saturn in the first house energy. Paradoxically, as Jupiter was actually squaring his Saturn. So I'm guessing that a lot of this energy that was all of a sudden funneled into his life, this overnight success, well, what it seemed like an overnight success for the most of us, but what I know that for him, having looked at his chart, doesn't feel like an overnight success. It feels like something he's been waiting for and pining for years. Well, this kind of energy, I think, also produced in him a lot of fears and might have wanted him to kind of retreat from the limelight a little bit. So yeah, he just has this very exuberant, very direct kind of energy, which makes him very lovable. But I do want you to keep in mind, guys, that with Saturn in Cancer, such a sensitive energy in the first house, he has been through the ringer. Pedro has a Venus in Taurus. This is a very sweet kind of energy. This shows an individual that has long-term, lifelong commitments, a person that finds it very hard to let go of their childhood friends, a person that keeps well-balanced relationships with their family members, a person that is very into love, into good food, into the pleasures of life. A Venus in Taurus is a person that enjoys femininity, a person that doesn't really prioritize a skinny person. They might actually enjoy a woman with curves, a woman that has a very strong head on her shoulder. A Venus in Taurus also shows a man with more traditional, classical tastes, a person that prioritizes the safety of a long-term commitment. And this energy is actually finding itself in the 11th house. And the 11th house is the house usually ruled by Aquarius energy, Uranus. So it's the house of having a group of friends. It's the house of being quite emotionally detached from the people that you love, but loving them as an ideal, being tolerant and giving and kind, but not necessarily so passionate in personal connections. So we see here an individual that has classical traditional tastes in the house of co-workers. This is also the house of the internet. So when you have Venus in the house of the internet, is there any other better explanation for why the internet loves him so much? He tends to come across as Venusian, the ideal lover on the World Wide Web. Not only that, but in his relations with his coworkers, he really feels emotionally connected to them. He loves working with people. He loves being part of groups of people that are working towards a specific ideal. The proponent of certain values and rights, and he loves to engage with words and things such as, reading poetry and talking about philosophy really titillate him, really make his heart grow fonder. So we can see a representation of all of these things online. He does have this presence where from time to time he reads from Pablo Neruda, for example. He is also engaging in all sorts of philosophical conversations while he's having some hot wings. He is also politically very active, supporting LGBTQ rights, mostly because of the fact that he also has a member of his family that was born male but transitioned into female, and he's such a supportive brother. So we see here a very beautiful energy of a person that has strong convictions, is very moral, has traditional values, enjoys beautiful classical forms, enjoys good food, people, and long-term relationships, enjoys especially safety and stability. So a Venus in Taurus shows a person that's good with their money. This is not an individual that likes to flaunt their money, but might very silently invested into really important art. So we see here a person with a very beautiful Venusian energy. The only issue here is that it tends to come across as fluid because it is sitting in a tense aspect with his Mars. So his Mars in Aquarius makes him really act out of the character that the Venus in Taurus is trying to put forth. While he enjoys traditional forms and classicism and all of the things I mentioned before, he can also self-sabotage himself by going a little bit solo in his personal connections, by choosing independence above a long-term commitment. This is also an individual that could have a lot of secret, sensual times, if you know what I mean. There's a lot of secrecy surrounding his preference. Is he into men? Is he into women? With a Mars in Aquarius, I would be tempted to say he is into both. But the fact that he has a Venus in Taurus, I think, might make him just mentally explore such options rather than actually putting them into practice. And here is the really interesting thing. I just noticed that he has a double whammy with me. What is a double whammy? Have a look at this clip that I created here. I go in depth regarding what is this energy. It's basically when you meet somebody that has your Venus placement on their Mars and their Mars placement falls on your Venus, and looking at the degrees at which Pedro has his Venus and his Mars, it's almost perfect. We are in a perfect double whammy. So I have a Venus in Aquarius, he has a Mars in Aquarius. I have a Venus in Taurus, he has a Mars in Taurus. This would make us excellent lovers. He also has a moon in Capricorn, and I can completely identify with that because I don't have a moon in Capricorn, but my moon is conjunct Saturn in Sagittarius. Sagittarius is very friendly to Aries energy. My North Node is in Aries, conjunct his Sun and his Jupiter. My Jupiter is in Aries, just like his. So there is a world of energy there that we can share. This man grows on me. And now that I know that we would be excellent lovers, I mean, one can only dream, right? So if you're curious about double whammies with your favorite celebrities, pull up their chart, pull up your chart, have a look at that double whammy video that I created for you guys a while ago, and see if you have these kind of placement with your favorite celebrity. The final thing I need to talk to you about is the fact that Pedro has a North Node in Sagittarius, which makes his South Node in Gemini. His North Node is placed in the 5th house and his South Node is in the 11th house. The 5th house is the house of the world stage, performance, who you are on a solar level, your deep connection to the divine that gives you inspired ideas to perform in front of people. This is the house of artists, fun fair, amusement parks. It is the house of short-term romantic love affairs, the house of passion. And we can see very clearly that there is a theme that is very strongly reliant upon that destiny. His north node in bold, brave, and super charismatic Sagittarius in the 5th house, the house of the self, the house of becoming more luminous, becoming optimistic, becoming well known and adored. So it is Pedro's destiny not only to work as an actor, because we see that the north node is loosely conjunct his Neptune and Sagittarius in the 6th house, and Neptune is the energy of film and photography, and we see it very strongly projected into the 6th house, the house of daily everyday routines, the house of health, co-workers, the work that you do in service to other people. So he is in the service of the public when he works as an actor to provide us with entertainment. North node in the 5th house. I hope you see how these energies kiss and connect with one another, because even though I am showing you his chart by bits and bobbins so you can actually understand the elephant by breaking it into small bits, you have to go back and see the elephant of the chart that is created here and understand it as a whole. A lot is reliant upon this north node, and many astrologers actually believe that all the other placements that we have in the chart, the placement of Venus, the moon, the sun, Mercury, they actually all serve to help and enhance or sometimes even challenge your destiny. So the north node. And we can see how the Saturn placement in the 1st house is getting him to really focus on his body and to really focus on his relationships with other people, on growing his confidence and understanding who he is. The fact that he has the Sun conjunct Jupiter in the 10th house also shows that he has this very solar public image. So he's learning to understand who he is by how the public perceives him. He has a comfort zone in the 11th house, the house of the World Wide Web, of connecting with other people in friendship groups and in social groups, social media as well. So that's his comfort zone. It is very loosely conjunct Venus in Taurus, just by the house, not by the placement, because his Venus is in Taurus. So we see how that's his comfort zone. Venusian things, relationships with women are his comfort zone to a certain extent. Being in the mind, communicating, but in a very softly spoken and intuitive way, that is his comfort zone. Reading, writing, interpreting, maybe contributing to scripts, performing, that is his comfort zone. And what he is growing towards is using all those skills and this knowledge to become a superstar, to become somebody that is well known and adored, a confident individual, and even to a large extent, pater familias. Yes, the 5th house ruled by Leo shows an individual that becomes the leader of their own family, the leader of their own business, basically the energy that exudes light and attracts everything around it. It is ruled by the sun, the most important star at the core of our galaxy. So this is the kind of energy that Pedro is meant to embody in this lifetime, to get out of his mind and more into his body, to let go of second guessing himself and doubting and playing two-faced personalities, South Node in Gemini, and truly embody with confidence and determination, with honesty and bravery, that Sagittarius energy of I am the best, I am here, I am the winner. And very briefly, I need to say that Sarah Paulson, being a Sagittarius sun herself, helps him tremendously in fulfilling his destiny. That's why they are such great friends. Guys, this is not about sexuality. You can tell from the energy that they have. She is here as one of his soulmates to push him forward in his career. I'm pretty sure that she helped him pull some strings behind the scenes to get certain roles, or to know whom to talk to in order to get certain roles. Sarah has this incredibly exuberant, confident energy, which can be a lot for him to handle on a daily basis. So they're not having this kind of relationship where they're live-in buddies, even though they seem pretty close, because whoever touches our North Node also can make us feel quite uncomfortable if you spend a lot of time with them. So I can see very clearly that This is a woman that's important to help him fulfill his destiny. Their relationship is a destined connection, but it has no more sensual undertones. So I don't think that they are friends with benefits. I generally think that they are just two souls that have met in order to help Pedro especially fulfill his North Node in Sagittarius. Let me know if you'd be curious to have me analyze Sarah Paulson's birth chart, because I have another series called Astro Babes, and I'd be happy to oblige. I'd be happy to look into her chart and see if Pedro has a similar effect on her destiny. So folks, it's a wrap up. This is what I had for you. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you have enjoyed this clip. Let me know down in the comments. Do you enjoy Pedro Pascal? What do you like the most about him? If you can't stand him, why is that? Comment down below. I would love to read your comments. Also, if you would like to get in touch with me, just so you know, I'm a certified astrologer. I do create personal birth chart reports, love asteroid reports, transit reports. You can get as many of those as your heart wants. So feel free to get in touch with me for that. Thank you so much. Until next time. Toodaloo.